Good afternoon and welcome to News 5's broadcast of a press conference organized by the government of Belize Press Office to clarify the 15-acre land purchase for a new tertiary level hospital in Belmopan. And so what we're going to do right now is we're going to head over to that press conference as the head table is being introduced. And so let's head over to that press conference.
We'll start off with brief statements and then we'll open it up to the media. There will be no limitations on the media except to ask for respect so that no one media host hugs all the time. And that's all we'll ask, but no limitations. So without further ado, thank you.
Good afternoon, members of the press, and thank you for coming. I'm aware that our 3:30 start time is pushing it close to your news deadline, but I had to attend a very important handing over ceremony between the Carl Hirschner Memorial Hospital, the Ministry of Health and Wellness, and the Belize Tourism Board for the renovations of the Accident and Emergency Unit at KHMH. So I thank you for your patience and understanding. This afternoon, I'm joined by members of the Ministry of Health and Wellness, officers from Belize Water Services Limited, as well as the Lands Commissioner. After our remarks, we'll respond to as many of your questions as time permits. Let me point this out very clear. I am very much well aware of the skepticisms some of you have when it comes to politicians and these agreements. How can we blame you when there were so many times under the previous administration that so many bad deals occurred? So we understand the skepticism and we understand some of your apprehensions. This is why we are here this afternoon to address whatever concerns you may have. The truth is that as far as the land acquisition for the site for the Belmopan Hospital is concerned, there is no smoking gun. There is nothing to hide. Let me go through the events for you step by step. Now, you all know that one of this PUP's administration's highest priorities has been to improve the access to quality health care. For this reason, we are moving forward with the progressive rollout of primary healthcare services through NHI. We will not stop working towards achieving universal health coverage and equity in health. In Corozal, Orange Walk, most recently to Belize City's north side, and by the beginning of next year, in the Cayo district, we have or will be rolling out NHI, and in so doing, bringing primary healthcare services across Belize. Our administration believes, as we proclaim, that our health is our wealth. So, we see this as an achievement for the people of Belize. Like Social Security, national health care represents vital components of PUP's unyielding commitment to an adequate social safety net for all Belizeans. Already, our administration, with the support of Taiwan, commenced the work for the construction of the long-anticipated San Pedro Hospital. Recently, we constructed a clinic in Placencia. We refurbished clinics across the nation, from Bullet Tree to Kikaka. At KHMH, we recently invested in the state-of-the-art equipment. Carl Hirschner Memorial Hospital is our national referral hospital for secondary and tertiary level care. But KHMH functionally and physically has numerous challenges. As such, we determined that a new modern hospital should be built in a more climate-resilient and central location. A hospital able to provide quality secondary and tertiary level health care to those from the southernmost and westernmost villages and towns. We also decided that Belmopan would be the optimal location. Belmopan is centrally located. It offers higher ground for climate resiliency. It is in the vicinity of the University of Belize. So we saw it as an opportunity to support the efforts of UB in developing tertiary level medical education in Belize by also having it as a teaching hospital where clinical education work could be done. With this vision, we approached the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and we are thankful to them for agreeing through the Saudi Fund of Development to finance this hospital on very concessionary terms. These terms include 2% per annum interest rate fixed, 5-year interest-only grace period, 20-year repayment terms. Of course, the Saudi Fund for Development have certain conditions we must adhere to. It will only lend to the government. Government must own the assets acquired or developed using the loan proceeds. Loan disbursements are not paid to the government but to the contractors. Contractors must be Saudi or joint venture with Saudi contractors. With the Saudi loan, the government agreed to build the hospital on land to be acquired from UB. After the technical working group visited the proposed UB land and fully aware of the needs required to construct the new hospital, they determined that the UB land was not an adequate location. They presented a number of reasons for their determination. One of the primary reasons was the lack of access to care, including emergency care. This would be significantly delayed because of where the UB land is situated. The UB land is in a flood-prone area. A creek runs through this land that leads to the river that cannot be blocked, or it could cause flooding in the entire area. Also, the technocrats at Belize Water Services Limited informed us at the Ministry of Health that to provide water and sewage services to the UB site, it would cost an additional $2.5 million to provide the service in the area. Too frequently we hear of serious road traffic accidents that occur on our nation's highways. Our doctors will tell you that a few minutes can make a difference between life and death. To get to the site that UB was offering could easily take 15 minutes or longer. This was a persuasive reason why Cabinet supported the proposal to relocate the hospital. With no road or other infrastructure like electricity and water, imagine what it would cost to get all this in place, and how long will it take? Imagine the inconvenience and cost our nurses, doctors, cleaners, security personnel, and others who would work at this hospital would have to endure having to go an additional 6 miles to and from work every single day. For all these reasons and more, the technocrats in the Ministry of Health made a presentation to Cabinet recommending that the location be changed to a suitable land near the highways. Cabinet was convinced and requested that the Ministry of Natural Resources, in collaboration with the Ministry of Health, identify an appropriate location for the hospital. Several options were presented and reviewed, all private parcels, and Ministry of Health ultimately settled on the 2 parcels on the roadside that were unencumbered and easily accessible. The process of negotiations with the owner thereafter commenced, at which point both parties obtained their own valuations based on comparable sales. The Ministry of Natural Resources valuation was $6.2 million, while the owner's valuation was for $9.3 million. Ultimately, the owner agreed to $6.9 million, $700,000 higher than GOB's valuation, but $2.4 million lower than the owner's valuation. For the record, we in the Ministry of Health and Wellness are convinced that this is the best possible location for the hospital to be constructed. Let me now address the matter of the value of the land. The technocrats at the Ministry of Natural Resources, in explaining how they came to the $6.2 million value, shared with us what lands in Belmopan are now being sold for. To say the least, land in and around Belmopan has a premium value. For context, earlier this year, 0.46 acre of land on Constitution Drive was sold for $600,000 Belize dollars. On George Price Boulevard, 1/3 of an acre was sold in 2023 for $290,000. Clearly, in a number of instances, the price per acre exceeds the price for which the Belmopan Hospital land was ultimately bought. Let me ask everyone listening, what is the cost of a life? By placing the hospital at a location that cuts down travel time by no more than 15 minutes, lives will be saved. These are the paramount considerations of the team at the Ministry of Health, and this is why we made those recommendations to Cabinet. The Ministry of Health and its technocrats stand by its recommendations and support the decision of Cabinet that a more accessible location be selected for the Belmopan Hospital. As for UB, there is no loss to the university. UB will gain the use of a modern secondary and tertiary care hospital for clinical rotations for its medical students, and it will get to keep its land. Let me now provide an update on where things are. The Central Executing Unit of the Ministry of Economic Development is in its final stage of negotiation with Saudi firm Dar Al Omran, who partnered with Belizean firm Morrison and Associates for the award of the design and supervision contract for the Belmopan Hospital. A request for proposal for the design and supervision of the Belmopan Hospital was issued on 1st February 2024. The initial closing date for the receipt of proposals was set for mid-March, but was extended to mid-April. 5 applications were received. Evaluations were conducted in July, and Dar Al Omran was selected with a bid of $3.29 million. After receiving the no objection from the Saudi Fund for Development for the award of the contract, the CEU initiated contract negotiation with Dar Al Omran. Those negotiations are in the final stage and should be completed before the end of next week. Once the negotiations are completed, the CEU will seek approvals from Ministry of Finance and the Contractor General's Office for signing of the contract. I will stop here and invite Nurse Bell to provide additional information.
Good afternoon, everyone. I will be speaking on the components of the technical working group and the whole process as to how the Ministry of Health came about with the justification as to the need for the relocation of the property. So when we have different projects, you may know that we must have a technical working group, and the responsibility of these technical working groups are for us to be able to monitor the implementation of these projects and to identify any issues issues that may arise early and to try to mitigate them as quick as possible. So the technical working group for this particular project was established in September of 2023. So after this working group was established, one of the first issues that we had identified was we wanted to know exactly where the land that the university was going to donate to the ministry or to have us use for the hospital. So the members of this technical working group include members of the Central Execution Unit of the Ministry of Economic Development, Recondev, the University Chief of Operations, and the Ministry of Health, which include the health planner, our engineering assistant, and myself as the director of the project unit. So we did a field visit to the university, and they identified the parcel, which is parcel 6303, which would have been used for the hospital. So we did the site visit, and we noted that the first portion of this parcel, which was showed in the media, is not the area where the Ministry of Health was given. That portion is for the forensic department, and so that particular parcel was divided in two, with the Ministry of Health getting the larger acreage, right? And so when we did the assessment, there were several things that the technical working group identified when we did the visit. As the Minister of Health mentioned, one of the major things we noted was the creek that was running directly in the property. And this particular creek is the one that is the drainage site for the Belmopan area and would normally take the water for the different creeks that run within that area. So it's the area where you would have the runoff water for the Belmopan city. So in addition to that, we also noted the issue of access. And that is something that is very important when you look at health systems, because you can look at access from two different points. So we looked at it from the aspect of infrastructure, meaning the issue of roads, the issue of moving patients from the facility and having them accessible to the facility. So that was one component of it. So you are looking at how patients would navigate or how patients would move within the urban infrastructure to get to the facility. So you're speaking about transportation links, people able to walk to the facility, ease of access with a low-cost transportation. And based on our experience at the Ministry of Health, we currently have the Palmview Center that is located in Mayamopan, which is closer than this particular area. And to date, there is no public transportation that goes to that particular area. We are still transporting our staff for each shift to that facility. So you can see how that also was an important factor for us. Not only the access for the staff, the safety for the staff in the area, but ultimately the users of that facility. So that facility, why we say the users? Because the facility will provide secondary services, meaning the Western Regional Hospital is going to be replaced. So the population of Belmopan will no longer access services at the Western Regional Hospital. They will access the service at this new facility. In addition to the secondary care, this facility will also provide the tertiary care services for the Cayo district and also for the south of Belize. But one thing that we need to also remember, that this facility will act as the alternate to Carl Huchner in the event of a natural disaster. We know that the vulnerability for Belize City or Belize District, so if Carl-Hushna needs to relocate in a category 4 or 5, this facility will also be able to accommodate for such emergencies. So after we completed the visit, we also had a third meeting at the office with the technical working group where we did a further analysis of the land based on the mapping and the GIS coordinates, and that was when we also identified the issue if we need to connect the access for this facility to the Southern Highway. In that particular area, we would need road infrastructure, but we will also need to procure private lands for us to be able to have access to that particular area. For the George Price Highway, similarly, they need to construct a bridge as well that will connect through the Maya Mopan community. So those are some of the things that we had to look at the technical working group. After that, the ministry, the CEO was informed of all the information that we gathered as the technical working group. And so the Ministry of Health did a cabinet paper outlining the reasons for us to, the need for us to find an alternate location for the placement of the hospital. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'll state the facts related to sewer treatment plant close to the proposed land. So this plant was upgraded in 2015 with the funding from IDB, CRU, and Jeff. And since then, it's almost going to be 10 years. This plant meets all the standards suggested by DOE, matter of fact, international standards as well. So plant is working to the best efficient capacity. We don't have any issues with the plant, nor smell. Secondly, I saw some question posted on the media about the leakage. So in terms of safeguard, we have installed geosynthetic clay liner under the plant, and there is a 1-foot clay layer on top of the geosynthetic clay liner just to have a double protection. So we don't see any issue plant being nearby the proposed land at all. We have to be compliant. We have to submit the data to PUC every month. Matter of fact, Public Health and DOE, they do random checks on our plant, and we meet all the standards at that plant. So we don't foresee any issues. Now, with respect to proximity, so couple of years back, I was sent to US, requested by US Embassy to visit some of their plants. And their plants are in heart of the cities. So in New York, Washington, Baltimore, I visited a couple of their sewer treatment plants. They are in heart of cities. It's just to put necessary safeguards. So that's what we have in place from since then. So at BWS, we don't see any issue, the land nearby our plant. Matter of fact, that will reduce some cost of extending the utilities to the land what they have selected recently. So that's all from BWS side. And I will request Land Commissioner to shed some facts on this matter as well. Thank you.
Good evening. Talbert Brackett, Commissioner of Lands and Surveys. I am here to present on the value of the subject property. When there is a request for valuation, I, as the commissioner who is in charge of the department, are here to submit what we refer to as the synopsis of the valuation. At the request of the CEO, the Chief Executive Officer, there is a request to value 2 parcels of land. Visiting the site, I have to do a personal inspection. The inspection is based on walking the site and looking at all the intricacies as it leads to valuing the site. When I reach the site and look at the site, there are 4 different methods of valuing land. There's a comparative basis, the residual basis, the profit basis, and the income. The site is not considered an income property. The site is not considered a profit property. Using the comparable was not doing any good in relation to valuing the land. Why? We have to do extensive investigation before we value. Investigation include looking at the locus, to see the size, the neighborhood, the terrain, the topography, and all the other aspects that come with looking at the land to value. The comparative basis would be one of the concern that we look at. Upon doing investigation, it was considered best using the residual value, valuation method. The land owner had applied to subdivide the land. Under Chapter 188 of the Laws of Belize, any parcel owner can apply for a change of land use, meaning if I have 5 acres, I can apply to subdivide that land, which that landowner had clearly applied for. The owner applied to subdivide 2 parcels of land, which are the subject parcels. There is no way you could hinder or stop that person. That is his personal right. We had accepted that person come to the physical planning section and apply, which is vetted by the principal lands officer office. It was approved, and that person had applied for provisional approval. Commissioner of Land is the chair to the land utilization process. There are quorum where people from the private sector, along with technocrats from other departments, vet, whereby the commissioner have no input on that vetting. It wouldn't be conflict of interest. The commissioner signs on that. So when that comes in, it is vetted by the private sector along with technocrats. To value a parcel of land of that subject nature, it is not just to use the comparative method. Why? Because there are clear indications that the parcel owner had applied to subdivide, which he did, and which had passed provisional approval. If I would value using the comparative, I would be deservicing that person. I could be taken to court for using the wrong approach. The residual approach, I will start with the basic information you need. You will need the size of the land, which I will refer to as a locus, and the size or a comparative land that I will use to value on the method that I'm using. So, if we look at 5 or 6 acres, and we use a comparative parcel, we would use that comparative parcel and see the size and compare it with the subject parcel to see the amount of lots that that subject parcel would entail. The LUA, the physical planning, the planning authority, will have a compliance that you must take away 10% for green area. So when you take away 10%, that was done in the valuation. There are road networks, which is subtracted. There are surveys that was subtracted. If you look at the process of subdivision, you must have an authenticated plan, meaning that not me, not the department, but a private surveyor land surveyor, let me be exact, because you have valuation surveyors and many other surveys. I don't want to go on record for somebody to come at me at that. So I'll say land surveyor have to survey that parcel of land. When that land surveyor survey that land survey is authenticated. It is checked by the principal surveyor's office, not the commissioner of lands, not conflicting. I have no control over that. So when that occurs, the principal surveyor bring that parcel map for authentication, which is signed by the commissioner of lands, who is the head of the department. So that is signed after checks. Anybody or any other person, a land surveyor, anybody could go back and check that parcel or that authenticated plan to prove that it is just. So it is not conflicting. Now to where the valuation starts. I just wanted to get that clear. If I do a comparative method on a land that have clearly been subdivided, even if that land was not subdivided, anybody that has some knowledge of valuation would know. You could go to any book. You cannot disservice a client or any individual that you are valuing for. You cannot do a comparative basis on a land that has some sort of intent, or even if it does not have the intent that you see fit, it is within city limit. So that comparative method wouldn't work. So you'd use the the residual method. Upon doing the residual method, you'll have the amount of lots. We use the comparative. The comparative lot that we had was 150,000. Stemmed away from that, and we use conservative, 116. We didn't use the 150. And I could show you records here where parcel 3811 was upstamped. And it's 267 square yards. For argument's sake, we didn't use 267. And this is 2024. We have a parcel 7298, 1619 square yards, 179. We still didn't use that. I used $116 to be conservative because we want to be fair. Using the 116 by the amount of parcels that the subdivision would have would give us the GDV, the gross development value. A Google image, which my deputy over there have, Mr. Cal could show you, he could walk around. There are roads within the development. The Google image clearly indicates the roads. I have heard media houses saying, oh, you value bush, retiree, a whole other thing. You know, how can you blurt these on radio station and TV? Discrediting people. Discrediting. Before me inside here, that I valued bush. You should have come with me into that bush. There is a survey done by a private surveyor. There are roads in the subdivision, which Mr. Carl can show you. He has it on his phone. If you go extensive, please check this information before going out there blurting foolishness. I know you'll come back at me for this, but my name is on the line because you call my name on radio stations, on TV stations. I am working with professional standards of valuation. So we get the GDV to move on. When you get the gross development value, we subtract for roads, which are in there. We did not give final approval because we are waiting on Ministry of Works to grant them the letter for final approval. But the roads are in there. Subtracted. This is why I'm saying conservative, because that is subtractive. If I add that in, it will add to the value. We subtract for all developments. Survey. We subtracted for surveys. From the gross development value. When you get the gross development value, then you use the present value of $1, today's value, not future. And this is why I use 116. Because it is conservative, we are being fair. I'm not taking up for the government of the day. I am doing a professional job. There's a station that said I am doing it privately. The letterheads clearly indicate Government of Belize. On the footnote, it said Commissioner of Lands. So I cannot understand these people. Anyhow, let me move on. Sorry. I know you're hearing me. I want you to hear. This is what I want. Okay, thanks, sir. So when you do the present value of $1, there is a formula to do the residual value. And this is where we come to 3.2. I will go again at it. There is a private valuation done by private valuer or private valuers that indicates far above what I valued for. I've never heard it on the radio that somebody has valued. So my valuation is at 3.2. The landowner clearly indicate I won't sell you that land for that. Looking at the valuation, I am a land economist. I am trained in, sorry? I am trained in, 3.2 is for one. Looking at that land, I had advised, can we keep on this side of the highway? We wouldn't want to go on the other side because the highway is the main metro. If I keep on this side, I could create a buffer in front for traffic to enter the land and come and exit the land. Valuation also tell me, land economy, you could have dual access to the land. The land has so many entrance and exit. You could put a roundabout inside the land. I've studied in Jamaica. UA has it because they refer to this. So we could put a buffer in front along the highway without crossing the highway. We wouldn't want to go right upon the airport, the airstrip, sorry. I know I'll be ridiculed for saying an airport. Because of noise pollution. So we'd prefer come this way. So using those, we have entrance, exit, buffer in front, dual, triple access, rear, north, east, west, south, sorry. North, south, west. I had advised my department, my evaluation, looking at this, and also I've heard the S word for the pun. The media using this S word and blurting like this thing is so bad. We have moved to compost lately, where these water could be treated for use beyond what people are thinking. Compost I have done extensive studies in valuation where compost had created these ponds to be, people could nearly swim in these ponds if you think about it. They are very, very cleansed, right? So these water could be treated and used for many, many different reasons. I wouldn't want to go in that. That is not my part of the... But I'm just using, because I know they will ask, why or did you look at the pond in your valuation? So I'm just extending why I'm using this as a example. I wouldn't go beyond this, and I want to say thanks and good evening.
All right, we'll now take questions from the media. Like I said, there are no limits on questions. We just ask that you be cognizant that news time is approaching. All right, please. And questions can be directed at anybody at the head table.
Good afternoon, everyone. Is it working? Mr. Brackett, I'll start with you. Your wording to reference these sewer treatment ponds, would you swim in them?
Hello? I am not saying I would swim in those. I'm telling you that there are countries where these things are treated that way, that people swim in them abroad.
Not in the actual ponds, though, in the material that comes away from those ponds that is treated. What is in those ponds, as far as I'm aware, is not treated, and I guess the BWS official can speak to that. And if you could add in your response, I'm sorry I don't have your name, I read that in fact there is the danger of such sewer treatment ponds leaking. Now you've spoken about all the upgrades and so, but can you address the potential for it? And if you could also answer if that location has ever flooded, but if it has not, would you be prepared for flooding cover? I'm not sure. I'm not the expert on those, but what guarantees are there that there wouldn't be seepage that will impact in that area?
Good afternoon, ma'am. My name is Sanjay Keshwani, okay, and I am a Chief Operation Officer at Village Water Services. So I'll tackle one by one question, and if I miss something, you can please repeat again for me. So the first question is about seepage or the leakage. Potential. So what we have done, we have installed a geosynthetical clay liner under the bed of the pond. And as a double protection, 1 foot of clay layer was also put on top of the clay liner. So to avoid that type of risk. So in my professional opinion, I don't foresee at all seepage or leakage issue from any pond.
On the sides?
Same thing, ma'am.
Okay.
All the bumps have a clay liner, geosynthetical clay liner imported from Canada, and then top of it we put the 1 foot of clay. So that seepage issue I don't see. Now with respect to, I think second question was about flood. So I'll give you some kind of example of hydraulic dams, right? When they are full, they open the gates, right? What they do with and this is internationally everywhere, including in America, Britain, they are first world countries, right? But we try to be like them. I'm
Right.
tired of comparing ourselves with third world country. We should always aim high. So that plant is designed to meet those sort of competition, right? In case of flooding situation, let's see if hurricane is coming and forecast is showing that it will be Belmopan. We have gates in place where we have to fully open the gates to allow that hydraulic overloading to pass through the plant. So that flooding mechanism is also been placed in the plant to avoid those type of risk. So both mechanism has been placed, ma'am. And of course, I won't swim in the pond, just for clarification purpose. But in India, because of poverty is too extreme, right? So maturation pond, they use for fish farming. And then when people use that fish for food, they just ask them to cook it for longer than usual time. So if you cook it for 30 minutes regular fish, mind you, I'm vegetarian, so I don't know, right?
I wouldn't eat.
But in Calcutta, which is a mega city, they tell them to cook it for 1 hour because it's cheap farming. But I haven't seen anybody swimming in it, ma'am.
Have you ever had to employ that feature that you're talking about, similar to the dam one, based on the significant rainfall that we seem to now be getting due to climate change?
We have put in place in our disaster preparedness plan. So example, this June, when Hurricane Brill was forecasted to come towards Belize. So our planning phase 2, we needed to open our gates just to protect neighborhood, Belize, everything. So we have that as a part of disaster risk plan. preparedness plan.
Thank you, Mr. Sanjay. I won't remember your last name.
I mean, Sanjay is fine,
Apologies
ma'am.
for that.
Sanjay is fine, ma'am.
But still keeping it on the ponds. The reason why I found the wording strange is because obviously reporting has already been done in interviewing residents who live very near those ponds, and they have spoken about the very strong smell for a very long time in the year. If someone from the Ministry of Health can take this question as to the dangers of having that stench so close for so long, and the lungs and that sort of thing.
Good afternoon. I don't know if that, I don't think that stench, that smell comes from the sewer ponds. Mr. Sanjay mentioned already that that is not an issue. Odor is not an issue. Odor, those ponds are managed by that. My understanding is that there are other factories, if you want to call it that, around that vicinity that might be contributing to the smell that the residents are reporting.
Okay, but you see you're starting a lot to guess. It appears to me.
I did not guess.
So then which factories can you point to that would have that stench? I know from traveling up to Orange Walk, Corozal, it comes from the cane farms and the processing of the cane. I don't know any other area that has that smell from a factory related product. I know
Mr.
there's a
Sanjay,
Clorox factory.
No, there's,
But
no. There is a factory close by.
the
and I
Clorox one.
No, I would ask you to investigate, but there is a factory close by that can contribute to, that is contributing to that.
I mean, this is now an issue of national concern. And as I mentioned, there are residents of that area who are pointing to this. I don't know why you find it difficult to disclose which one.
Because I'm not sure of the name of the factory.
But what do
I
they
can tell
produce?
you is that it is not coming from, well, I can't tell you that. Mr. Sanjay told you that.
Okay, yes, please.
That it's not coming from that place.
The sewers.
Irrespective, I
So
don't...
there's no stench as a result of those sewer treatment ponds?
Yes, there is no smell coming from that pond.
You have independent verification.
We have been getting this complaint, Mr. Jules. So we have invited Public Health and DOE couple of times at their.
Please invite the media. Please invite
Now-
us in, give us a tour.
Miss, I can't remember. I'm sorry, your name, Miss
It's fine.
Marisol.
Marisol.
Now that is little bit above my authority level. But you can write to BWS. You can write to BWS and ask for approval. I have no problem. But do you, Mr. Jules, but the question that asks, we have invited Public Health and DOE at their own time, randomly. I go anytime. There is no problem with the smell. So, but there are
The
other.
source is telling me there's a brewery in the area. What's so difficult to
Right.
say this?
Now I have another question actually, right, Mr. Jules? When we build a house, right, where we build the toilet, we build a house and the bathroom is in the toilet. These plants have become the part of our community and social mechanism to survive. Back in days, we built this plant far from Belmopan city, but city has been growing, right? And we have to live with the facts. But I can write it and sign it that it's working to its best efficiency and capacity. There is no problem with this plant.
Marisol, I want to ask that you maybe give, you could come back, like I said, there will be no limit.
Jules never may I give up, so I not give it. And Una said unlimited. Una said Una could ask all Una questions.
But you have to have respect for other media hosts,
Yes,
too,
I understand
Marisol.
that, but other times that doesn't happen. I'm just going to ask two more. I'm just going to ask two more and I'll yield until, if there's the potential for another round. Which engineer did you rely on to assess the suitability of the UB land? And can you provide us with the technical report that the Ministry of Health has referenced, or else, well, other individuals have already indicated they'd likely have to go through the FOIA to obtain that.
Okay. When it comes to the suitability of the land from the perspective of the Ministry of Health, we were looking at that particular issue when it comes to access to services, okay? So from our perspective, we were looking at how the population is going to access this facility. In any type of facility assessment that have been done in previous years and that other institutions are using, these facility assessment tool, one of the critical components is access for the population. For example, the recent assessment that was done at Carl Huchner by CABE, they used their tool for health systems, and that was one of the critical factors. So those are the things that the Ministry of Health use to assess the suitability for us to place a hospital in that particular location there.
And the latter part of that question is whether we can have that report. Whether we can have access to that report.
That analysis was presented as a cabinet paper there.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
As a cabinet paper.
It was presented as a cabinet paper.
Yeah, that's a bit. Okay, the last question I'm going to ask now relates to something the PSU president mentioned, that payments for these types of transactions are usually done in installments. And the report is that payments were started via installments, and then just a few weeks later, the entire lump sum came in. And he suggested that the only reason why there would be a lump sum payment is, in fact, if there is any corruption involved. Thank you.
Marissa, let me answer the question as it is, because it was mentioned by some of these persons that it was a lump sum payment. Let me clarify, though, that the government did not buy the land in just one payment. There was a down payment made. It was done in 3 payments, actually. There's a standard purchasing agreement. A down payment was made in June. In July, another installment payment was made, and then the balance was paid off. Now, let me also give the rationale why this has to happen. As you know, when dealing with the IFIs and multilaterals and these loans, if we are going to construct any facility or any loan that is being had for any investment within, in the case of the hospital, the property must be under the government of Belize. Ownership must be had. So I asked Marisol the question, which owner will transfer land to you if you haven't paid for it? And as I mentioned, when you're dealing with IFIs and these type of arrangements, I repeat, the ownership of the land must be under the government of Belize. That is the norm in any one of these type of IFIs arrangements. So that's the reason why these payments had to be made. Time is also of essence, and we need to ensure that the work and the project gets done. We're not going to be, and I'm saying this here because I'm not going to be like the former Minister of Health, who got up there, boasted, had big pomp and circumstance about a $30 million grant funding, which they end up losing for building the hospital. We're making sure we go through the right process, and we're following the condition of the loan agreement.
All right, go ahead. I'm not sure if you're representing Guardian or WIV.
Yes, good afternoon, Shane Williams, Guardian newspaper. Understanding that it's a cabinet paper, the assessment went as knowing that you can't reveal much. But I just wanted to get some clarification, because you mentioned specifically about access to the facility. But was there any cost-benefit analysis in terms of the road connectivity, the water infrastructure, and the electricity needed for the originally proposed site? And how much was it total in terms of all that infrastructure needed?
Let me give you, and I will answer similar to what the people who have the expertise in this Minister Julius Aspat was very clear in his response when it was asked of him. And similarly, if you look at the road network that would have to have been invested alone, you're talking about close to $7 million just in the 9-mile stretch of road. You also have to understand that in addition to that, as the technocrats at BWS has said, you will have to invest another $2.5 million in terms of getting the water and sewage system in place. Now, coupled with that, as highlighted by Nurse Bell, is that we would have had to acquire private lands. We don't know how many private properties we would have had to acquire to get access to the Hummingbird Highway, and as well on the western part on going to the George Price Highway. So there's a lot of further sums of money that we would have to be invested. And remember now, we couldn't have used that from the loan proceeds. The loan proceeds has a very strict condition. And so where would we have found these additional monies? So there's a lot of reasons, but again, we reiterate our position. The main decision of why we have moved and suggested the location is because we want to ensure those people who has to have access to the facility are not hindered and have any barrier to quality health care.
Thank you, Minister, but just for the avoidance of doubt, and maybe it is for the leader of the technical team, was the assessment done that the Minister mentioned would have needed to be done in terms of the infrastructure needed? I understand the Minister eventually gave an explanation and gave an assessment of his set of what would be needed, but was the assessment done before the decision was made to look for an alternate site?
There was no need for that particular assessment when it comes to that, because we had already identified these issues. But you must remember, even if we had the funds to put in the road infrastructure in that area for the south, we still remain with the issue of access for those persons within the Belmopan community. That is what you have to understand. Persons within the Belmopan community need to have access to the facility, and finances for transportation and geographic location should not be a barrier to access to health. So even though you would have, maybe we would have had the funds, I am not sure, but the issue of getting the locals to access within that still remain a problem, and it will still remain an issue up to today. You have to also consider that the areas surrounding that land, it all belong to the university, you know. So when would you foresee that development would have occurred? So those things are very important to consider. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just one more for me. To the Commissioner, are there any other land suitable for such a project available in the surrounding areas other than the one that was chosen, and was an evaluation done on those other properties?
Well, our job was to find the best or suitable parcel, and that is just what we did, to find the best suitable parcel. I had delegated to my department to look at different parcels, and this was the best we found. So we used that to our best use.
All right, Paul?
Good afternoon, Paul Lopez, News 5. On Friday, I think it was Mr. Beard from the KHMH Workers Union that referred to an epidemiological report. Why wasn't such a report or such an assessment done on the current property to get an understanding clearly in a report of that?
I don't think that Mr. Bear really understood what an epidemiological report is. Because an epidemiological report speaks to the analysis of disease conditions within a community. It has nothing to do with a particular land. So we do conduct epidemiological studies of our population on our catchment that we serve. So we are aware of common conditions that you would see in the district of Belmopan, that you would see in the south. These are information that we use in planning. So for example, with the rollout of NHI, you have to understand what type of conditions you're seeing in certain communities. You have to look at the population, you have to look at poverty, you have to look at all the social determinants. And that is what determines where you place your facility based on that now is an epidemiological profile for that particular community.
It has nothing to do with whether or not the sewers would increase any sort of infection issues within that area.
No, Mr. Sanjay clearly explained just a while ago the issues surrounding that. That is his expertise. So I will not comment on that. But from the health perspective, it has nothing to do. And he also mentioned the issue of stabilizing patients at Western Region. As I mentioned earlier, when that new facility is built, the Western Regional Hospital will be closed, and that facility will provide the secondary care for Belmopan. And that's the reason why the issue of access for the people of Belmopan and nearby communities, the villages on the highway, is very important.
All right, so secondly, Minister, not to get into anybody's private life per se, but for the avoidance of doubt, there's this skepticism as to who these, or questions as to who these private landowners are, and whether or not they have any sort of relationship or connections with anybody intimately or just personally, professionally within the government. How do you respond to those questions?
I will answer this in one simple term. The Ministry of Health made a recommendation, as I said, to the technocrats at the Ministry of Natural Resources to find adequate land between the Guanacaste Park and the Hector Silva airstrip in that vicinity. The research was done. They came back with the identified options. The Ministry of Health felt that the two parcels that we have identified are the best parcels that we feel that we can build a facility to. And that was done. The negotiations took place, as highlighted by the Commissioner, in terms of the valuations, and a price agreement was made. I don't know where the media is coming from about a relationship with this one or that one. These are Belizean people who own land in Belmopan, and at the end of the day, fair price was paid for the value of those lands.
Finally, for me, do you foresee any sort of legal action coming against the government where this deal is concerned, and how then do we move forward if that's the case?
I'm not sure why you're referring about legal action. Now, if we had really took advantage of the owner of the land, that's where I would have presumed legal action. If we would have gone to what some people were saying, compulsory acquire the land, then we could have ended up costing the Belizean people far more money. This was a genuine, like I said, there was no smoking gun. Clear procedures were followed, a fair assessment was made, and we have now gotten the land for us to proceed with the work of constructing that hospital as soon as the other phase has completed.
Yeah, Jules?
All right. Good afternoon. Thanks for holding a press conference. Think of how much could have been saved if we just did these things up front, but I think it's a first, so welcome to the party. Mr. Brackett, hello, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right, you hear me? Good. Sir, I don't accept your self-exculpating declaration that there's no conflict of interest. I don't think you are the proper arbiter of your own conflict of interest. Experts in the field tell me it is a conflict of interest, but I plead, please take us to see the roads. I will stand corrected. And the lampposts, a subdivision should have lampposts, electricity, poles, all these things are necessary in a subdivision. Are you going to say those are there on Mr. Google as well?
Can I answer now?
Please do.
Chapter 188 of the Laws of Belize.
Educate me, edify.
It requires roads. Nothing about lampposts. Nothing about lampposts. And what else you asked?
What?
Nothing about water.
Nothing, none of those are required.
No, those are not the requirements.
So you'll take us to see the roads, though. That isn't locked off like the
you want to
sewage
see a
ponds.
Google image?
No, I want to go with you.
You could come.
Okay,
I'll willingly take you.
I will happily be edified by the visit.
Welcome,
Thank
sir.
you. And we can breathe in the fresh air because...
And after that, can you clear the air?
Happily, sir. I will take a dip in the ponds with you.
Because you have defamed me.
Well, sir,
verbally.
I asked you to set it straight, sir.
So we'll set it straight.
I can't see the roads on Google Map, but maybe I don't have the correct version.
No, we have it.
Okay, well,
And it's clearly indicated.
okay, sir.
Any other question?
Not for you, sir. You
Okay.
have it. You have set me straight. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. If I could ask, was there, Nurse Bell, was there multi-sectoral input on this advisory group in terms of here speaking about engineers, but then we hear the MIDH engineer saying that, well, that area too low, that in need a bridge. We know that there's water on it right now, although maybe Google Maps don't have that yet, but there's water on it right now. So was there DOE, MIDH, persons from other areas, or was it just MOHW staff?
Okay, no. When we did the walkthrough, it was the members of the national working group, right? So it included the university, it included Ministry of Health and the Central Execution Unit staff.
So the only experts were the health experts?
In our team, we also have our engineering assistant as well, who forms part of our team.
Who is a part of the Ministry of Health?
Correct.
So no outside input, right? No external, apart from UB?
UB and the Central Execution Unit and Recondev,
Recondev, okay.
Yes.
And so if you could speak now about access, because maybe I'm not so sharp, but San Ignacio Hospital, when it was built, or the Sitch Community Hospital, when it was built, it was far from the town. The town has now come to meet it. And this man knows well, his brother is the manager, right, I think? Chief of staff, it's hard to keep up. Second, the Placencia one that the good minister recently opened is what you call proximity, or is there some other variable at work? How do you properly factor in proximity in settling on these locations?
Sorry. So using San Ignacio Community Hospital as an example, when that was built, I think it was the early 2000s, that was moved from where it was, which is now the House of Culture. And when that was moved, I was at medical school then, but there were there were numerous complaints about people how they could get to that facility. People were complaining mostly about the time it took to get there and the time it took to get transportation just to get there. And as I mentioned, as Ms. Bell mentioned and as the minister has mentioned already, our biggest concern is access, and access, when we say access, we're talking about how quickly, how timely the patient can get to the facility. And that is the biggest concern and the biggest indicator for us.
However, the one you recently opened in Placencia would not be consistent with that.
That's a polyclinic, and
Okay. But it's the only medical center.
correct. But that's a polyclinic, and it's different. Granted, it should have used the same measuring stick as it relates to access, but this time we just can't repeat the same mistakes again. And I'm saying the mistakes in the sense of where we locate and where we put our facilities. I'm using, again, the San Ignacio Hospital as an example. We learned a lot from that. I mean, the history is there. And up to today, people still have, it still takes a amount of time. The distance has not been reduced. I mean, 3 miles is 3 miles in 5 years ago and 5 years from now.
From the planning unit, no, sorry.
To have to look at the costs to the client or the costs to the patient to get to that facility, and what priorities will that family have when they are seeking care. So when you place a facility like San Ignacio, sometimes you have to decide whether you will delay seeking care or you will buy your food for the next day because you may have to pay taxi and bus. So we have learned from that. I wasn't in the ministry then either, but we have learned the hard way from examples like the San Ignacio Hospital. We can't do it a second time.
Fair. Okay, and then finally, did you all factor in your planning, if it's still going to be a university or a teaching hospital, if how that multiplies costs for the university? Because then they'll have to have 2 sets of dorms, all types of things. Hold on, I'm coming to it. And also in increasing the foundation, since it's low-lying, I think we could agree on that. Since it's low-lying, more foundation, but you can't go too high because you can't build too high beside an airstrip. Were these things factored into?
Okay, I can speak to the issue of the university hospital. It will still be a university hospital. You have to remember that the university, this is not their first set of students in the health sector. The university have been using our facilities for nursing, for training of midwives, for pharmacists, for laboratory technicians, and at no cost to the university.
Okay.
Okay, at no cost to the university. So this facility will continue to be a teaching hospital. So having it on the compound does not mean that they will not have access.
But
the theory will happen at their medical school. That is where the theory happen at the university.
9 miles away, according to you.
Yes, and exactly.
So only the students will have to be inconvenienced. Because
No,
okay.
You must remember how many years we have the nursing program. The nursing program has been the program that has built the health system in this country. And where is the nursing program? Where is the theory happening since then, and where is it happening today? And our students, our nursing students, have to come to the university, and for community health, our nurses have to even go to the regional hospitals to do clinical practicum. So having a teaching hospital does not mean that's the only location. The doctors will also have to do primary health care, and so they will need to come to the different facilities outside of Belmopan.
Is it optimal like that, though? Of
course it is optimal,
optimal
because the theory will happen at the university and the clinical practicums happen at the hospital. And so you build your hospital in such a way to allow for the space for the students to have these rounds that we do, these comprehensive rounds, where they will do case analysis. And it's not only going to benefit the medical students, all the different interns that the hospital will have.
And
All right,
then
Jules.
the other thing on the airstrip and the height and the foundation, were those factored in?
I cannot speak to that. I am not an engineer.
Well, you said you had an engineer, though. You're in charge of the team.
Yes, we do have an assistant engineer, but
Assistant.
yes, an engineering assistant. But that particular role, when it comes to the foundation of the facility, you have a design and supervision firm that is going to be responsible to develop the designs for the facility and also to do the issues of the soil testing and all the different regulations surrounding the construction of that facility. And we are already in the process of doing that procurement.
All right, Jules, we could give somebody else a chance.
Mike, can I say something though to Mr. Vasquez, that we're not building classrooms, we're building a hospital, which will be used and have access by the university medical students as a teaching hospital.
Yeah, my question, Vice Reader, simple. It's in regards to the sewer pond. I think it's malinformation, ridiculing the situation, but there's a cost-effective and a cost-benefit. Cost-effective as it relates to where the media is talking about the hospitals should go, and cost-benefit in regards to where it is now going to be built. Could you reiterate, because you explained it well, just for public consumption? The cost benefit as it relates to the way, because you mentioned it, that the university hospital would be able to use it, you know, and if it's cost effective, because if it was built on the other land, that comes additional cost in regards to have to build a sewer system. Thanks.
So basically, with respect to the distance from our plant and over the water lines, so the UB land would be a couple miles away from our system, and we have to extend our system a couple of miles, and that would add up to almost our high-level estimate $2.5 million. Now, existing or the proposed land is very nearby our plant, and I believe our high-level estimate shows almost 1/10 of the cost of doing the same extension. So basically, financially, with respect to water and sewer, that was just a cost benefit. I cannot comment on the roads and I cannot comment on the electricity wise because it's not my strength and expertise.
All right, we'll take the final questions from Aaron.
Yes, thanks. Good evening. Aaron Humes, Breaking Belize News. Minister and Nurse Bell, I just want to be absolutely clear with regard to the relationship between the ministry and the university as regards this hospital. Will there be a formal agreement that has to be signed once the hospital is complete? Because I think there are some questioning whether the land should be gifted to the university. Please clarify that, just to be absolutely clear. The state must own it, yes, but just to be absolutely clear.
Mr. Aaron, there will be an MOU signed. Actually, there is a draft MOU right now, and we are waiting for the Attorney General's Ministry to look it over. This is about the 5th version of that MOU, and it will be signed as soon as the Attorney General's Ministry has reviewed it. That's one. I have to reiterate what the Minister and Ms. Bell they have both said here, that there is going to be the access for that hospital. It will still be a teaching hospital as it relates to UB's part. The primary purpose of this hospital that will be built is not to be a teaching hospital. The primary purpose is to deliver secondary and tertiary services to the population. The added value, the icing on the cake is that UB will now have a place where they can send their students to study and practice before they become medical practitioners.
I think that's very clear. Thank you, Dr. Sabido. And then, Commissioner Brackett, from you, lastly, I know you went into some detail as to the valuation and the price, the amount ultimately reached, but can you tell us why there is such a discrepancy between your figure and that of the private valuator? Because I think there's been a lot of confusion as to how the same piece of property can be valued at two very high figures. And that's
Okay, good evening, sir. I have never seen the valuation from the private valuer that did that valuation. I have done my valuation. I've heard 7 million, I've heard 9 million, but that was not my interest. I did my valuation at over 3.2, and that was at 3.2, and that was what I did. I also want to indicate that Mr. Vasquez had asked a question about, and we had looked at the elevation of the land, and it's over 100, it's about 135 feet above the ordinary sea level, sir. The elevation on, it's on the slope, it's not in the slope, it's on the slope, it's sloping land. So it's sloping, so it drains off. It doesn't get up from my observation. It's very sloping.
Marisol, I know you want cause one scene, but we need to get out of the room. No, we need to get out of the room. Marisol, we need to get out of the room.
In relation to the University of Belize, are you able to indicate what their explanation was for not providing land, say, closer to the gymnasium? Because they have acres, hundreds and hundreds of acres.
No, the university did not indicate to us why they did not assign that to us.
Government, couldn't you impose on them? Like
What they had indicated to us, that they are giving us this portion, part for us and part for forensic. So I guess their plan was to develop that particular area for health.
And the very last thing is, why are the Saudis in such a rush to have this done?
The Saudis is not in such a rush. Every project has a project timeline, and it has a TDD, which is their terminal disbursement date. So it's not being rushed. That's the life of the project.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
For our live this press conference organized by the government of Belize. In Belmopan, thank you so much for tuning in. Please be advised that this press conference and information coming out of this press conference will be aired in our 6 p.m. newscast, so you can tune in there at 6 p.m. for further updates and details on this press conference. Until then, I am Paul Lopez. Have a good evening.